Violin accessories that you actually need and what's a waste of money. If we haven't met, hi, I'm Megan. I'm a violinist and teacher. I've been playing the violin for over 20 years. I have my bachelor's and master's degrees in violin performance, and I'm Suzuki trained. If you're enjoying my videos, please just double check and make sure you're subscribed to my channel. And if you're interested in working with me, you can check the description for an online private lesson application. I teach one-on-one online private lesson, as well as Learn Violin Online, which is my comprehensive, structured yet flexible, effective yet affordable online learning program. In this video, I'm going to be sharing the accessories that you actually need for your violin and ones that you really don't. I'll also be leaving links to all of the products that I mentioned in this video in the description. So the first essential is obviously a case. You need somewhere to store your violin. So the case that I currently use is a BAM case. And honestly, it's a great case, but I just bought it because it was trendy. In school, it was like the thing to have a BAM case. And it's lasted me for 10 plus years, so obviously it's great quality. But they are like $700-800, and you definitely don't need to be spending that much on a case. Another really great case recommendation is Musafia, but again, they are pretty pricey. What I really like about BAMs is that they're super light. Mufafias are actually very heavy, but overall more protective. A standard violin case will serve you just fine, and it's likely that if you purchase a violin outfit, you already have a case for your instrument. But even if you keep your instrument out all the time at home, you definitely need a case. Who knows when you might be called to play a gig? Another essential is rosin. So the rosin that I personally use is leatherwood rosin, and I absolutely love it. It's really crisp and clear. However, it is definitely on the very expensive side for rosin. The rosin I use for years and years is Bernardel, the light rosin specifically, and it's much more affordable. I think it's like $12 or $13. Another rosin that has become a personal favorite of mine and that I will be purchasing next once my leatherwood runs out is jade rosin. It's hypoallergenic, so if you have any allergies, it's a great choice for you. And the sound is amazing. I've had a couple of students purchase it and I've been really impressed. Another essential is obviously strings. The strings that I personally use at the moment are Vartol's The Beast strings, and I love them. They're super loud and have a beautiful tone. I'll leave a video linked of me playing them. And Vartol strings, they are on the expensive side. However, they do offer a great deal. For first-time customers, you get 50% off. And also, if you're not in Europe, you do not have to pay the VAT tax, the VAT tax. For this, the strings that I used for years and years were the Peter Infeld Pi strings. I really like them because they're very bright and I have a brighter instrument. But again, they are on the more expensive side. I think a great middle of the range string in both price and sound are Dominants. And for beginners, usually children or those who have just started out, I recommend the D'Addario Prelude strings. You do not need to be spending, $200 plus on a set of strings. I would say the high end, you want to be spending around $150, and that's going to be your Peter Infeld, your Vartol. But dominant strings, which I think are about $60-70 for a set, will work just fine. Pretty sure that Hilary Hahn plays on dominants, so you definitely don't need super fancy expensive strings. Something else that I personally believe is an essential, at least for me, is the shoulder rest. Now, if you don't use a shoulder rest, you can definitely disregard this. But again, you don't need a super fancy one. So the one that I use, I'm not even going to show you because it's embarrassing, it's falling apart, but I've had it since I was 12. And I probably do need to get a new one at this point. But it was nothing special. It's just one that kind of came with my violin, I think. It's a Viva. However, when I do finally break down and buy a new shoulder rest, I'm definitely going to be getting the Kuhn Bravo. This is the one that my husband used. I've tried it and it's really comfortable. Another great recommendation is the Bon Musica. This works especially well if you have a very long neck or maybe a weirdly shaped shoulder because it's adjustable. It can be really contoured to your body. But also the standard Kuhn works just fine. If it ain't broke, don't fix it. If you don't have a super long neck, if you don't have any weird setup issues, if you're not uncomfortable, a Kuhn will do you well. Like I said, this one, I've had it for years. It just came with the violin. You don't need anything super fancy, but you do have options there for you if you need them. Another essential is definitely a music stand. Obviously, posture is so important when it comes to the violin. And if you're constantly looking down or looking the wrong way and twisting and contorting your body in different ways when you're playing, it's not going to be comfortable and you're not going to want to practice. The stand that I personally have is a Manhasset stand. I think it's a pretty, very standard music stand. That's what all the schools have, at least where I'm from. When it comes to folding or portable stands, I highly recommend the Peak stand because the backing is totally flat. The other wire stands, it's kind of hard for the music to stay on because the back is not flat. Another essential is definitely a tuner and a metronome. So the one that I personally use is the Korg TM40. I've had this for forever, since I was in high school, so over 10 years. It still works. It's never done me wrong. I believe the newest version of it is the Korg TM70 though. I'm sure that one's even better. Now, you do not necessarily have to buy a standalone tuner and metronome. The reason I have it is honestly just because I needed it before like online tuners and metronomes were a thing. However, there's several free apps out there. I'll leave my favorite one linked in the description as well. Now, some things that are optional. You do not need multiple bows. So while it's never a bad idea to have extras, to have an extra bow, it's not an essential. Second, you do not need a fancy violin bag or wrap. I know there are companies out there that sell beautiful, beautiful violin bags. Again, it's really not necessary. As long as you are wiping your violin off with a microfiber cloth, then you are golden. You also do not necessarily need a humidifier. Obviously, you want to keep your violin stored in a cool, dry place, but it's not necessary to have a humidifier. You also do not need a wall hook or a wall stand. I know some students like to keep their violins out because it just like motivates them to practice more or reminds them that they need to practice, but you do not need to buy an extra hook or something that you put on your stand or the wall. Just leave it out on the table. I've never been able to do this though because I grew up with animals. You also do not need geared pegs. Yes, geared pegs can be super helpful, but fine tuners serve you just as well. No, you do not need that fancy electric violin or even a silent violin. If you're worried about your neighbors listening to you when you practice, just use a practice mute. And I personally think it's better to learn to play on an acoustic violin. Unless you have some specific reason why you absolutely need that electric violin, you don't. You do not need an iPad. Unless you are a gigging musician, you don't need an iPad to read your sheet music off of. You can print it, you can read it off of your computer, but you don't need an iPad. You don't need that pedal, the pedal that turns the pages. And like I said, unless you are playing professional gigs, this is not something that you absolutely need. If you already have it, go for it, but it's not a necessity. All right, there you have it. Let me know, what is your favorite non-negotiable accessory for your violin that you can't live without? Thank you so much for watching, and please make sure you subscribe before you go.